just a clarification, for a protected time, there will be a bump on the table.
Gotcha, thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. So the motion set before us today is that this House would make it obligatory for magical beings to provide magical medical treatment to non-magical beings. And we're setting this, like in the Harry Potter universe. And when we presented this motion, opposition, they did ask us what Harry Potter is. So in my modeling, I'm just going to further explain what each thing means, defining my different motions. Different parts of my motion. And then after that, I'm going to be going through 4 points with you. I'm going to explain why it's no longer necessary for the magical world to be separate from the non-magical world, or the muggle world, as I'm going to start referring to it as. And then it's also that it saves time and money, and it saves lives, and that it's also just time to merge them so that we can make new innovations in medical treatment. Yeah, so in my model, I mentioned that we make it obligatory for magical beings to provide magical medical treatment. By magical medical treatment, we mean anything that was discussed in the Harry Potter canon, which is currently, I believe, Phoenix Tears can cure basically any kind of injury. There's healing spells to repair broken bones, or you can get rid of your bones and then regrow them if need be. You can also, bezoars are a stone found in the stomach of a goat, and they can cure any poison. And believe that's it. That's what we're going to be using as the medical treatment. So anything beyond that is something that we're just not going to discuss that. Those are the things that we're going to be discussing as part of Harry Potter canon as medical treatment. And yeah, so essentially what this motion is also asking to do is to break the statute of secrecy and to have that just be absolved. The statute of secrecy, if you don't know, is the thing that prevents magical beings from showing their magic to muggle beings. And so I'm going to go into my first point of saying why that is no longer necessary. The reason why the statute of secrecy existed in the first place was because of such the religious times that they lived in. Magical people faced extreme persecution. You can look at the Salem witch trials to see how hated anyone, even if they didn't have magic, was still seen. If you were seen as demonic of some kind, then you were greatly persecuted. The world that we live in right now, and specifically in Harry Potter, which is set in Britain, they don't have nearly as intense religious, not everyone in the population is as religious as they once were. It's no longer mandated to be a certain religion. I know in Britain, and I think it was 1600s, if you weren't part of a certain church, you could be persecuted. Protestants were persecuted horribly for not being Anglican, and then eventually that flipped Protestant as well. But if you did not follow a certain religion, then you were persecuted greatly. And obviously, as magical beings, they mostly followed pagan traditions, so they would be persecuted. We think that in the modern society of Britain, Muggle Britain today, that doesn't necessarily exist as much, and therefore the statute of secrecy is no longer as necessary as it once was, and therefore it's more beneficial to society and to people as, just to everyone in the world, both Muggle and magical, to just get rid of the statute of secrecy and to allow for magical intervention into the Muggle world. In my next point, I'm going to go more into specifically the medical field. So if you are providing magical treatment to, say, a broken bone, that's going to be so much quicker and more efficient than providing a sling, and that's going to go on. If you provide a sling or a cast or some kind to fix a broken bone or sprained bone, something like that, then that's going to take so long to heal, which can make it so that maybe this person isn't able to write tests. Maybe this person isn't able to perform their job as they once were able to. And if you have them, and also with those, there's a chance that it will reset weirdly, and then that could be now something that's going to affect that person for the rest of their lives. Whereas with the magical treatment, it's guaranteed that that bone is going to set the way that it needs, originally once was. And so therefore, we think that it's just more efficient and it makes much more sense to just do the magical treatment and have magical treatment be treated rather than just, allowing for it to just do it the Muggle way.
Okay. A clarification on the motion. What do you mean exactly by being obligatory, and what happens if magical creatures don't provide medication?
So it's kind of like that, so it's just like, if you have the training to like help the person, then you must help the person. Like, we're not saying that every magical being, if you don't know the spells, you must perform the spells, because obviously that's ridiculous. But if you are a trained meta wizard and you have the training to do so, or like you know the spells, you must provide like that assistance to a muggle if like you see that they are hurt. Yeah, so also with the saving time, there's also the fact that like there's extreme wait times in hospitals right now, to the point where people are getting treated in hallways. So if we are able to use magic to then quickly treat illnesses, there will no longer be as many people waiting in hospitals to get treatment, because it will be going so much more faster and efficiently. My next point is pretty straightforward. This could save lives. Like, if you are in that, like, yeah, it just saves lives. So if there's something going on, that makes sense, it saves lives. So my last point is just that it's time to merge the magical and non-magical worlds. Like, think of all the innovations we could have if we just like merge the Muggle and magical worlds together. Like, right now the magical world cannot, like, Muggle objects cannot exist in the magical world because they will interfere weirdly with the magical stuff. But if we allow for that innovation to happen, then so much more could occur, and we think that, especially so in medical treatments, my part is going to go more into that. Yeah, we just think it makes more sense. Thank you, honorable speaker.
I'd like to thank the PM for their speech and welcome the LO to open up the offside debate here.
Sorry, yeah, it's okay, I'll do it here. Gov tells us that we need to break the code of secrecy, but then gives us no reasoning as to why this is the time to do it, except for the fact that religion is a little bit less prominent. A couple of things, and then I'm going to delve into my case. First, on this point of like religion being less prominent, I think that even if they want to say that, oh, people are generally less religious in Britain now, and therefore you won't have like the Salem witch trials happening again, doesn't mean that that part of Britain also doesn't still exist and still would hold the same attitude, but also it implies that like people are more, just because they're not religious, are open to the magic. I think that that is like fundamentally a wrong belief to like base their entire case off of, because we see that instead of like trusting religion, humans have like moved on to trust science, and to trust science and rationality as basically the new equivalent of religion, how they define their world. I think that even if you are to have things that cannot be explained by science, people are going to be inherently curious and wanting to either exploit it to understand it for their own means, or just to like try to like other it and try to like use it for nefarious means, or at least to like exploit it in order to gain those skills for themselves. I think that there are still pose like an incredibly large amount of issues that still stand if you were to blur these two worlds together, not to mention the fact that like not all people in the magical world are good either, and will probably try to exploit humans to their own means because we don't possess a lot of the magic that they have, and they can probably just like control us to the means that they want to. So first point on how this necessitates, on how like combining the magical universe with the Muggle universe is bad, and second on the impact on the healthcare system in the Muggle universe and why it's like unnecessary that we enact this. First on why combining universes is bad. I think first you're probably going to see a huge amount of exploitation of magic holders. No matter like the difference in religion, like I mentioned, people will still want to understand how others can have different skills from us, especially to try to understand through science how these magical skills, like how these healers actually get these skills in the first place. I think that's likely going to result in Muggles trying to detain these people or trying to get a hold of them through nefarious means, especially considering that there are like two completely different government systems. Therefore, like there's not a lot of laws in place to determine how we would extract them, whether it would be legal to try to like subject them to medical tests, right? Like I think that there's like a huge obsession with, for example, like testing on like aliens if they ever do land and figuring out like their genetic composition. I think a similar case is going to happen if they are able to figure out like that these magical healers have different abilities that cannot be be explained by science, and thus we'll try to like exploit them and try to use them in order to like harness those skills so that humans uniquely can use them, not based on the terms that these magic healers have set, for example. So like instead of just having these treatments only available when magic healers want to treat them or like have the skills, they'll try to exploit that in order to make it more universal, that everybody, that all humans can use it. I think that's extremely harmful for the magic healers because they're like constantly under the threat of being like taken away by humans and like their autonomy taken away and their freedom taken away, right? I also think that having like that the magical universe is not necessarily like, they don't necessarily have the interests of human beings at heart, right? I think that you can see that there's already like a lot of evil that exists within the magical universe. That's why like there are constant battles, like that's why Harry and Voldemort like fought a lot. I think that when you're able to have like magical beings that like have different sets of abilities and like the ability obviously to control things that humans can't explain, so for example like magic to control potentially other human beings, you're likely to get like nefarious forces acting on these human beings in order to try to get them to act in the way that they prefer to like fulfill their own goals in the magic world. If this doesn't work like from the magic world onto the point of muggles, it might like work from the point of muggles onto like the magical beings, right? Enslaving magical beings to perform their own like bad deeds, because we see that obviously there is still evil within like the universe, right? I think that that's just fundamentally something that's going to happen because there are always contending forces of good within society. But sure.
You stated that muggles would then try to enslave magic people, but then you tried to reverse that and say that now the magical people can enslave the muggles.
No, I'm saying that.
Unclear about who you think has more power here.
Yeah, I'm saying it's unclear. Like, even if muggles like have more power, or even if the magical beings have more power, either party that has more power would still likely use that power to wield it over the weaker party, right? Like, that's how enslavement usually works. That's how like things such as slavery happen, is when like a group that has more power uses their power to try to get the weaker group to perform their deeds, right? I think that like it's probably likely that the magical people would have like more power and the ability to like enslave humans and use like manipulate humans to achieve their own means. I think that's pretty bad. I think it's also bad if humans do that to like magical beings, right? That's the point that I'm trying to make. I think that if they want to make the point of like saving lives, for example, you're probably going to get more wars, more carnage when you have like two competing like different like good and evil from two different universes with different conceptions of what good and evil are, and different conflicts meld into each other. Like, I think we already have enough conflict in the world. We don't need to bring another world's conflict into ours, and the ability for like good and evil to intermingle in that sense and use each other for their own means, right? Second, I want to talk about the impacts on the human healthcare system and why it's unnecessary. Because a lot of the things that magical healers can do right now are like they already are trying to heal things that humans already have the ability to, like broken bones, cuts and scrapes, things like that. I don't think magic healers can heal like cancer, for example. That's never been in the canon. So I think that because we currently possess a lot of the current technologies to like deal with these issues in the first place, just the fact that they're inefficient doesn't mean we need to employ like a magical being to do it, right? That implies that something is wrong with this system. Maybe we need to fix the system in itself. They need to justify for us why having magic healers and the fact that they are more efficient and speedy and can maybe save a couple of lives is going to like outweigh all the harms of unleashing the entire magical universe onto society, right? The amount of disruption that caused, I don't know how they make this like balanced calculus, right? I think that also this takes away the impetus for humans to innovate in terms of like furthering their own medical fields, right? Also, I think that this treatment is just going to be only available for people who are like incredibly wealthy and are able to access this scarce resource. I think that this doesn't like do well for medical equity. I think that especially if you're trying to like talk about efficiency and speed, maybe it's about the system, not about the way that like, and actually incentivizing the system to become better rather than unleashing the undue burdens of like an entire magical universe, right? I think that human beings, like generally, they want to solve their own problems. They have the tools to solve their problems through science. I don't know why they need to have like a completely ununderstandable actor come in to try to solve their problems for them. Therefore, like whenever they do have a problem, to constantly like defer to that power and to be beholden then to that power. Like whether like the terms that they want to set, for example, the price, like who they want to treat, right? I think that they make it unclear for us how we are going to mandate these magical beings treat humans in the first place, because like assuming that they have more power over this resource, these people will probably be the ones setting the terms, right? And so I think then we at least would likely have to offer some sort of competitive pricing, which then feeds back to my point of it making this treatment incredibly inaccessible, right? And note that a lot of these treatments already exist in the first place, so I don't know why what they need to do now is to balance the harms of unleashing an entire magical universe and their harms like onto the world versus like the speed and efficiency of solving like broken bones, which we already can do, but maybe can just do a little bit better. Very proud to oppose.
I'd like to thank the LO for their seminar address and welcome the DPM, member of government, to deliver their seminar address.
Thank you, Speaker. I will first introduce my own point and then rebut what the opposition has come up with. And I will also make it more clear why this should be the case, that magical beings should be obliged to kind of heal everyone, all the muggle-borns. So my point that I want to bring up is if the medical services are merged, there will be more resources like Phoenix Tears and then a lot of other portions which could help bring a cancer cure or cure to diseases that we do not, as muggles, we do not already have. I mean, more resources might help. We do not have resources to maybe bring out a new portion or a new medicine that might help cancer, that might help a lot of different STDs. But if we have more resources like unicorn tear or any magical beings, hair, anything that might help cure cancer for all we know. And if the two worlds come together into funding it and going into research, that would further help and enhance us to come up with better medical treatment to make the world a better place. So there is absolutely no reason to come up and fix this. Now for my rebut. The opposition has said that just because people are not religious, they wouldn't want to exploit the magical beings. Well, in today's world, we have laws. We have laws in the human world. We have laws in the magical world. It's not like magical beings just go around killing people with their wands. It doesn't work that way. They have laws. It's illegal for them to use the Imperious Curse and the 3 known curses that kill people and that kind of tortures people and gets rid of their memory. They cannot use it. If they do, it will be against the law. And even in the human world, we have laws. So why would the humans go against something that is helping them, that is bringing more cure, that is helping world? It could even help world hunger someday. So it doesn't make sense for them to go against it. Yes.
These laws currently exist within the realm of the magic universe only, or the muggle universe only. How are they going to have universal jurisdiction over human beings, for example? For example, a magical being law.
A magical being cannot do any spell those 3 curses on any human being. And I'm pretty sure slavery is illegal in the human world. They cannot. They just try to exploit them and they'd be okay with it. Magical beings are also human and they just have extra powers. So they cannot just exploit another human being and call it, oh, it's with the law. The opposition has also said that it could go both ways, which I have explained that no, they cannot exploit each other due to the laws that exist in the current society. They've also said that it cannot heal cancer. I mean, with the resources that will be available to us, who knows what we can do? Who knows to what extent we can go to? So going into research with the magical beings, that would just be nothing but helpful. They also said something about the price, that how much will it cost to get those treatment. Well, doesn't have to, it's 1 second thing that heals them. It's not takes days to heal a broken bone, 1 month to have a cast on. Just makes it inefficient. Takes people out of the economy when they have a broken hand or a broken leg. It's not efficient at all. So my question is, why are we inventing new technology? Why are we inventing robots? To make ourselves more efficient, to make ourselves better, to make it a better world, and to heal cancer, to make human, to stop wars and everything. So why would we be close to such efficiency in the sector of medical care, which is only going to bring good to the economy? Yes.
Why do magical beings care about muggles?
To be fair, they are human beings in the first place, and that is why we want to make it like we might want to make it arbitrary to help them. Like it's not like you cannot just succeed in a world just with like magic, or in a world like we have our own problems. So if we merge, it will just be better. The opposition also said that all of these treatments already exist, but we would like
that a significant number of witches and wizards are probably going to be unhappy, right? We don't think magical resources is abundant to the extent that they can just share to muggles, right? We saw 7 movies of the Harry Potter, there's only 1 phoenix, right? We don't think these kind of resources are abundant, and if we start sharing those things to muggles, there are probably going to be some magical people who can't have access to those resources, or maybe just the price of these resources or medical care is going to increase because there's only a limited number of magical doctors who can provide these services in the first place, right? In that kind of context, we think people will have a huge hatred towards these muggles. We already see this in the status quo, especially from people from Switzerland House, who views like magical purity as being important and muggles being like unworthy of any like success or those kind of things. What is important to know is that the impact of backlash from a magical community can be extreme, right? They can literally kill people, kill muggles, just by swinging a wand, right? You do not want to make these people angry if you are a muggle. We think this is a bad idea, and the fact that humans, like regular muggles, have a history of exploiting other people, we think trying to do this to the magical community is going to have a huge impact that negatively affects muggles. Secondly, the impact of the magical people and also their like society. We think when we start to expose that magical people exist, the rhetoric or the discourse is not only going to be limited to medical care. It is going to be things like the UK's government wanting to get taxation from these people, like the UK government wanting to have control over these people in terms of their education or their laws or even the criminal justice system or those kinds of things. It is going to be like a conflict between the government of the muggles and the government of magical beings. We do not hear any engagement to this point that the issue is not limited to medication. It is literally limited to the whole social structure of both universes. Yes?
So the magical world has a different government, right?
Yeah.
So does the UK government go to America and ask the Americans for taxes?
Yeah, that's literally what your motion is suggesting. You're going to a different government and asking them for medical care, right? We don't think that is a just thing to do, and we don't see any reason for the magical beings to want to do that. Okay, another point that it was not really adequately engaged from side government, and I think it was a very important point coming from our leader of opposition, was that magic is something that muggles do not possess. They're going to view magic as something strange. They want their magical abilities because that is like human greed, and the fact that they can provide us with so many benefits, like practical benefits and economic benefits, medical benefits, is probably going to lead to the government trying to detain these people and conduct medical examinations, right? We think especially given the fact that children, even in muggle households, oftentimes possess magical abilities, and then they get sent to Hogwarts when they're 11, the government might start targeting specifically children with magical abilities and trying to detain them before they go shipped away to Hogwarts, right? We think these things are extremely harmful, not only for the rights of magical beings, but also just for the fact that they assume that human decency is going to prevent these things from happening, goes against all historical evidence of the fact that yes, we exploit other people, we bomb places, we do military intervention for the sake of oil interest. These things are already happening on a level of economic benefits. Think of what would happen if we imagine that we can extract literally human health from these populations. We think exploitation and conflict is inevitable in their paradigm. Okay, certainly on legitimacy.
even if you do not take any of our points, there's still a question of why can you force people, doctors who went through years of medication, to provide services to the people they hate, right? These are literally the people who have oppressed them. There is no obligation that, like, there's no justification or explanation on the obligation that they're going to oppose. We think from all of the practical problems to the principle of this debate, we think we win. Thank you very much.
Maria and I have already covered a lot of the main contentions that that need to be brought up in this round, but I'm just going to frame it more clearly for you. I think first, what I really would like to see from GUF is a clear mechanism as to how magical beings are actually going to how we're actually going to make them give this healthcare, and also why these magical beings are going to care for the best interests of Muggles, right? I think there was never any clear characterization of what their interests were in this, and what kind of power we were able to wield in terms of getting them to do this. But assuming that something exists, two main contentions. First, on what this does for healthcare, right? Because we think that right now a lot of the points that they make in terms of oh, we can probably solve cancer, we have more resources, and therefore we have more potentials to solve it. I think that right now, that's also the situation we found ourselves in, right? We still have a lot of resources, benefiting from more money in order to research for cancer would be beneficial to us, but they don't really contend with the comparative of the harms that we tell you of unleashing an entire magical world, and in terms of the marginal benefits in which they can give us for cancer research, because they don't have this already, and Maria points out that these resources are already scarce in the magical world. There would probably be some coercion in order to get them to allocate that resource to the Muggle world and not use it for their own beings, right? Not use it for their own selves. So I also think that they just needed to contend more with the comparative in this debate in general, in terms of the harms and the benefits of this marginal healthcare benefit, right? Because the main benefit that they give us is that, oh, you're not going to be able to take people from the economy for as long, therefore you make more money for the country. I think that first they needed to justify that a little bit more, why that's necessarily good. They could have talked about how that improves people's conditions, living conditions or something, but they didn't do that. So I think that point is kind of moot. I think that also things like health, sick leave exists in the first place to actually allow people to take this time off and actually heal, rather than just removing them from the economy, giving them no agency whatsoever. Second, which is about whether the magical world is actually worth it, right? Because they never really tell us why magical beings care about Muggle interests. Maria tells you that there's a ton of historical precedents of humans oppressing these magical beings. Therefore, there's probably going to be some hatred towards this group. It's ethnic conflict. There's a history. Therefore, that is probably still going to be carried over in the attitudes in which this medical care is given in the first place. Also, the only justification they give that people will care is that, oh, these magical beings are just humans, but what with magic? I think this is incredibly shallow, because even though we are all human beings, I think that human beings in and of themselves have a lot of conflict. Like Maria points out, they fight wars against each other, they bomb each other. I think even if we don't say that it's going to be that bad, there's at least some selfishness that plays into human interactions with each other. That might mean that in delivering this medical service, you're going to require an exorbitant amount of money or some sort of payback for that service, right? Because it's something that humans inherently don't have. I think the fact that selfishness is still going to exist, no matter what the relationship is probably going to mean some sort of exploitative attitude, right? I think that also they talk about this point of laws. I think that the fact that I point out the laws only exist within the terms of applying jurisdiction over Muggles only, or applying jurisdiction over magical beings only, you're probably not going to get protection for people between those lines. Also, laws can be changed if the benefits are seen to be greater. So I think that governments are probably going to be incentivized to allow the detention of magical beings if it's going to benefit in terms of healthcare. I think that this is going to be bad for magical beings, for Muggles in general. Very proud to oppose.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. So in my speech, I'm going to be going over just some rebuttals of the points that we haven't had a chance to interact with yet on our side government, because I think that they are crucial to understand and why we think that we as the government who think that magical beings should be providing medical care. I'm just going to interact with those points really quickly. So why do magical beings care? Magical beings already, they know about the Muggle world. They, they interact with it, on a regular basis. And furthermore, a lot of Muggle-born children are coming into magical world. They are an important part of the magical world. It's not as though they don't exist. They have ties to the Muggle world. Their families are in the Muggle world. Those are, really personal key ties that, tie them to the Muggle world and why they would care about it. Because people that they grew up with until the age of 11 are, that's who they know. That's who they go back to every summer. That's the world that they live in. A lot of the population of Hogwarts was Muggle-born. They're not all purebloods. Purebloods, as time goes on, are slowly dwindling out because they keep inbreeding. So those populations are a minority of the population. The ones that have no tie whatsoever in the Muggle world are a very small minority of the magical world. The world that actually exists in the magical world is predominantly either half-blood or Muggle-born, which both have intense ties, familial ties to the Muggle world and cultural ties as well. And also, they said that because of this hatred of the Muggles that exists within magical community, that therefore the care that they may receive is lesser than. Well, within systems where there is already bigotry towards another group, there is training that is provided to try and decrease the amount of bigotry that is being faced by the people being treated. And I know that these points may seem new to you as the judges. However, because we haven't had the chance to interact with them yet, as they were brought up in speeches that were after both of ours, I think that it's fair for me to be bringing them up now. Also, just the picture that side opposition has painted for us is a world of chaos, is a world where people are going to be killed on the streets by magical people with their wands, ignoring the fact that Muggles do have guns. They can kill just as easily as wizards and witches can. And the worlds that exist have structure, they have laws. As my partner has stated, there is laws that exist. We aren't just throwing two chaotic worlds together and hoping for the best. We're throwing two worlds with structure and we're trying to introduce them in each other to try and create new change, to try and create innovation that will further help the rest of the world and to create a better world. And also just bringing up the fact that they mentioned that a lot of witches and wizards already have intense hatred, as I believe it was the LO who brought it up with the wars that were fought. Taking terrorist groups like Death Eaters and trying to say that that's all magical people is the same as if we took a Muggle terrorist group like ISIS and said that represents all non-magical people. That's completely irrelevant to the fact of what's going on. They are a small minority of the population who have these beliefs. It's not the entirety of the magical population that has those beliefs. In fact, many of them have a lot of them, as I've already mentioned, have ties to the magical world, and I believe that fairly summarizes why magical people should care. It's because they have that cultural tie, because they have that heritage in the Muggle world that they are trying to honor and try and preserve the Muggle people. I feel like we have discussed why this is necessary and why it should happen, the reason why it exists in the first place. I think, and we on side government think that the risk for magical people has decreased significantly enough that it would make sense to try and merge the worlds back together, because as they once were together, now they were separated by controversy, and now they can go back together as they once were. So we side government proudly propose this motion to have it be obligatory for magical people to provide magical treatment to non-magical people. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I'd like to thank everyone for an interesting round of debate. Go outside, shake hands, we will deliberate, and then call you back.